Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Halloween edition of the Coaster Challenge podcast. And here are your hosts, David Cantu, Jenna Gazelle.
Hey, how's it going, Jenna?
Great, Dave. How's it going?
It's going good. Happy mid-September.
Yay. That means all of the Halloween stuff's in place.
Oh, yes. The Halloween season has begun, and it's underway, and my goodness, Not Scary Farm was insane this year.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what else to say. They did an incredible job. I'm just really shocked. I actually just like the fact I could just be out there with everybody, and just to have the whole team out there that weekend was just fantastic.
Yeah, and getting a chance to meet everybody, for me, face-to-face versus through Zoom and be like, oh, hey, so this is who I am.
Yes, or through a phone relationship as well with many of our friends in the East Coast as well. Well, I hope you guys are having a wonderful September. I will say it's been pretty hot here in Southern California. Seems to be scorching all over the country this year. Yes, Halloween season is upon us, and we've got another very special guest for our Halloween season. Andrew is standing by with Josh, and Josh is actually one of the main people from Scream and Scream out in Florida. And this one, Jenna, I believe, is like they do what's called a drive-up haunt.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little more about it?
They've had quite a few of these, I know, on our side, where you kind of drive through it, through these, like, mazes type thing. They have people scaring you through it.
So kind of like, instead of being in the walking around like in the parks haunts, you're in your car able to experience a lot of the on a bigger scale.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So like, you know, the carload of however many people you can fit in the car, you pay your fee, you go into the drive-through and you drive around in the, you know, in this like loop type thing. I know we had one out here in Woodland Hills last year. We didn't do it because it was like $90. And it was like, okay, that's a little ridiculous. I mean, if it would have been cheaper, we probably would have done it. And it was like, but it was per person. It wasn't like per car. And they gave you like a pumpkin. And I was just like, that was kind of lame.
So it's kind of like how Magic Mountain did it with Cruise in the Park, the car show. But they did a whole drive-through. But I believe they also did the haunt. They did the Holiday in the Park drive-through.
Yeah, it's like the Holiday in the Park, where you drive through everything, and it's kind of a loop, and then you exit out.
Well, that sounds really cool. And, you know, Andrew's got Josh standing by. But first, we are going to do our Halloween edition of YouTube Highlight Clip of the Week.
It's the YouTube Highlight Clip of the Week, Halloween edition.
Alright, so in this week's YouTube Highlight Clip of the Week Halloween edition, we are doing some great discussion about Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Hollywood. Now, I will be honest with everybody, I have not experienced Halloween Horror Nights at Universal yet. I will be experiencing it this year. But I will say Jana has seen quite a bit of what it's like, and this particular clip we're going to be highlighting here is something I've never seen in my life. You want to share a little about it, Jen?
So I've actually kind of experienced this, but it was like in the early 2000s with another friend of mine. It's the backlot tram ride. So you get onto the tram like you would for the backlot tour. The only thing is they have you get out of the tram and walk the maze. When I did it, I didn't realize that. Like, they didn't say, like, oh, by the way, you have to exit this vehicle. I thought it was you stayed in the tram and they took you through it. And that wasn't the case. This clip, you see them actually get off the tram and go through the different areas for the backlot. It's not real big, but it's still like that. You're walking through the Whoville, the Bates Motel, the Psycho House.
The destruction area from War of the Worlds.
Yeah, you're going through that and then you kind of get back on the tram and it takes you back up. I mean,
that is insane because so it sounds like you start off like you're doing a normal tram tour ride like it was like any other day. And then all of a sudden you just abruptly stop.
Yeah.
And they have you get out and then you're literally walking through the Universal backlot. And they've got it completely decked out, got scare actors all over the place. I saw in this one video clip that we're going to be highlighting in our show notes that they had a section that was dedicated dedicated to clowns, and I know quite a few people, Jen, they are not big fans of clowns.
Right? They have a huge
But I actually
clownphobia.
was surprised because in this video that I saw, yeah, you go through Whoville at the time, which I don't even know if it's still there this year. You go through the War of the Worlds destruction area where you see all the destructed airplanes, like actual size airplanes that had the roofs ripped off and seats, what you see from the clip from the movie War of the Worlds. And then you go through the Bates Motel area that has the scary house with the hotel down below, and then you're gonna go through a maze. But you know what amazes me is that they didn't have you go through Hill Valley in the town square area of the studio.
I think it might be just a little too long, because if you think about it, that tram ride's what, like a 15-minute ride normally?
Could you imagine, though, if they had you go through that town square? Could you imagine what they could do with the fog?
Oh, they could do so
they could do
much.
like an alien invasion in that town, man. I mean, it could be the like the invasion of the body snatchers, or it could be like, oh my god, they could do like, who knows, like Independence Day style, a giant UFO over the town.
I think Universal could do a lot better than what they've been doing. It's kind of like they're not bringing their A game to Halloween. I mean, Universal's known for their horror movies, the classics, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy,
Freddy Krueger.
A lot of these horror movies that they've been known for. And I've kind of, over the years, I've noticed like they kind of got away from the makeup part of it and dressing these scare actors up in makeup and are putting them more into masks. And
nice.
It kind of, for me, it kind of loses like that special, I guess, magic in a sense.
Yeah, I definitely get it, because the makeup part really brings out the characters that they're all dressing to be. I just think that on a business side, me being a businessman, knowing that, I have a funny feeling it's because it takes a lot of time and money to put makeup on several hundred actors for the horror nights. It's kind of like how it is when they basically treat it like you're going in for a movie set where you have to go in dress in makeup, and you could spend a whole day sitting in a chair. And I've done it, folks. I literally had a friend who was working to be a makeup artist in the studios, and she needed a student to volunteer to do what was called. So what she did was, it was no makeup that they put on me or anything, but they had me wear like this. She had to put this beard on me, but it had to be like, it's not something that you can just put a rubber band around and you have a beard on. This was like actual, like they glued your face.
Spirit glue.
They literally got real hair and they were adding it and stitching it and putting it on. They put it all on my face. They had me wear like this old man's beard. It was like about a foot down to my chest. But the process it took to do that, I sat in that chair for 10 hours. It was really hard to be able to sit down that long, especially if your butt gets sore from sitting down way too long.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, they used to do it, and now it's kind of, I mean, they'll do it during the day. They'll have some of the actors that are just on day shift, they'll put them in makeup. But then when it came to the horror nights at nighttime, they started putting them in the masks. And for me, it kind of lost like that magic of like, oh wow, this is what Universal does. This is what their signature is. I had gone back in 2000 probably, and I had done one with a couple of friends. And back then, like when we walked through, they were the scare actors came up to you, and I was more tripping out on the makeup because the makeup was so awesome. They were done up as like a cat person, and then they had the clown person, and it was just like that. Wow, that's really good makeup work. That's really cool. It's really awesome. They're in masks. Okay, like yay, that's scary, but I like the makeup. Personally, I mean, it just
I have a funny feeling Universal will end up going back to that stage. I mean, even Cedar Fair, Six Flags, a lot of their scare actors are in partial mask and makeup.
I mean, even with the partial, having the latex, to add into those features, it's a difference because one, it's not so hot for the actors when they're in these partial things, or it's probably still hot, but it's not like when they're in a mask and they're breathing and you're just like, oh my god, I can't breathe, it's hot, I'm ready to get out of it. At least with the makeup, it's like you're still able to breathe. You're not trying to breathe through this plastic piece of rubber or whatever it is, and just getting hot.
Yeah. Universal Horror Nights is also, at least they have good theming, especially with all the movie themes, especially when they go with Stranger Things, Walking Dead, they go through Psycho, Saw. I mean, they have a lot of incredible trademarks that Universal actually owns. But I believe that Universal's probably just going to keep enhancing. But I'm really curious to see what they've got in store this year. Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious. I want to know if they do the Chucky show again. If they do, you have to go watch it, Dave. That was the funniest thing ever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to put this wonderful clip about the Terror Tram in our show notes, but this was actually, and you know what's so funny? This is one of the only Universal parks that has a tram and that actually does this. Orlando doesn't even have the tram ride. So it's like, this is something unique for the Universal Horror Nights. So if you have an opportunity to go down to Universal Hollywood to experience the Terror Tram, it might be a good opportunity to go take advantage and check that out. But anyway, guys, this was a really good Halloween version of the YouTube Highlight Clip of the Week.
It's the YouTube Highlight Clip of the Week, Halloween edition.
All right, so Andrew is standing by with Josh from Scream and Scream. This is going to be a really fantastic interview, Jenna. Can't wait to hear about it. So take it away, Andrew.
Thank you, David and Jenna. This is Andrew, one of the producers of the Coaster Challenge podcast with you today. And today I'm talking to a special guest. With me, I have Josh, the general manager of Scream and Stream, joining me. Welcome to the podcast, Josh.
Oh, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, for sure. For sure. This is one of our interviews we're doing here to celebrate haunt season here in 2021, as many haunts are coming back. And of course, you guys actually were one of the few that actually did a haunt last year. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But I know you're continuing that here in this year in 2021. So before we get there, let's just talk about in general. So why don't you tell our audience about yourself and your involvement in the independent haunt arena?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually, much like most things in my life, fell into the haunt business by accident. Last year in 2020, like so many people, I found myself laid off, furloughed, all those fun things, kind of just looking for a way to make money because for anyone listening in Florida knows the unemployment system here is just fantastic. And I was struggling and I was really scared about what was going to happen. And I look on Twitter and I see Scream and Streams like, hey, we need people. And I'm like, I am people. I got this. And I ended up joining them about halfway through their run. And as somebody who loves, huge fan of Halloween Horror Nights and haunts and stuff, I was like, wow, I get to see the other side of it. And I was just really happy to have a job. It was definitely an experience. You know, you're out in the middle of nowhere in Kissimmee in a swamp. And I even remember my first day on the job, I'm driving out there and it's like you're just going further and further to the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, did I just answer a Craigslist like serial killer ad? Like, am I going to be okay? Got out there and met the team. And it was really fun. And as we went through the season, so like I said, I joined a couple weeks in, so they had already gotten started, but I fell right into it. And just immediately, I just became my own attraction in and of myself because we had to, spiel to the guests as they're coming through for the safety briefing and stuff. And I'm like, I could just spiel to you, or I could make this really uncomfortable for everybody in the car, and I'm just going to lean towards the uncomfortable for you. And it was just a lot of fun. And I stayed on through Christmas for the Jolly Creek event. And then we wrapped that up. And Chris, the owner of Scream and Stream, looked at me and he's like, what's the plan for 2021? I'm like, all right, I don't know yet, but let's do it. We just started talking. And suddenly I went from being a huge fan of horrors and haunts to being somebody who was creating that for other people. And I'm like, yeah, this works. This works for me. I feel right.
That's awesome. That's great. And I mean, I've known about you guys for a little while now. You guys were kind enough to invite Coaster Challenge to your first media event for the last year's Scream and Stream for your debut. And me being the one person here involved with Coaster Challenge podcast that's based here in Florida, everyone else is either Ohio or back in California. I was the one that wound up getting to attend, and it took some friends along. We had a blast. But the funny thing was I saw the location, Boggy Creek Adventures, which for those that are not here in Florida or not very familiar with Florida, Boggy Creek is is like a Gatorland. It's one of those places where they have animals and airboat tours, and it's sort of like a Florida adventure park. And I'd never been there.
Don't give them that much credit. They are not a Gatorland.
No, they're not Gatorland, but they're kind of a Florida. They've got the airboats and the no, for sure. It's a kind of a fun little place. It's got some character, and I'd never been there before. And like you, we're driving. My friends and I were driving out there. We're like, are we getting into a horror movie here? Is this like a meta thing? The other thing that's hilarious about it is, again, like I was telling you before we started recording, Josh, I'm a huge horror movie fan. Huge horror fan in general. Love haunts. Like you love Halloween Horror Nights. I just bought my ultimate frequent fear pass. I'm so excited for the return of that. And I've seen a lot of horror movies, even obscure ones, B-rated, even what you'd call C-rated. Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a movie, actually a couple of them, Boggy Creek, and it's about it's about Sasquatch basically here in Florida.
Yeah, I actually, funny enough, so when you spend enough time at Boggy Creek in a swamp, I'm also, like, in my other life, I'm also a writer, and throughout Scream and Stream and throughout Jolly Creek, I actually sat and started concocting a horror story in my head, and I'm actually working on a novel right now based around my time in Boggy Creek. And through all of my research, I found that movie, and I'm like, this is what I'm all about. And even now, working in Oviedo at the mall, I discovered there are so many horror movies based around malls, and they're all terrible. And I love them so much. There's one you can watch for free right now if you're a Vudu customer. It's called Chopping Mall, and it is the worst, but it has the most 80s horror soundtrack you will ever find anywhere, and I was there for it the entire time.
That's awesome. Check that out. So because even before going to the Boggy Creek Adventures there for your media event, I want to say it's on the 528, one of the toll roads here in Florida that goes east-west. And I remember there was an exit Boggy Creek Road, and I'm like, Boggy Creek? Wait a second, I've seen that movie. Yep. It's and then while Boggy Creek Adventures is out there on Boggy Creek Road. But yeah, so anyway, so it's just kind of meta for me. Like, I know about Boggy Creek. It doesn't end well. So luckily Scream and Stream does end well, because of course it's a haunt. It's all about having fun. And we'll talk a lot more about Scream and Stream later.
Sure,
perhaps last year's event, of course, this year's event, naturally big time as well. But before we get to that, let's have a chat about kind of you and your experience with theme parks and what those mean to you and things like that. And then we'll, in the second half of the interview, we'll talk more about Scream and Stream and what's in store this year, especially this Halloween season coming up here. So talking about theme parks for you, what was your first theme park attraction you ever did?
So we're going to go way back to the early 90s. So the first attraction that I ever remember doing, I grew up in California, and we went back to California to visit my dad, and he, had to win the divorce. So we went to Disneyland. I vividly remember that trip. The first attraction I remember going on was the Haunted Mansion. And I was terrified the entire time. I was not having, I was the worst that entire trip, because at one point my brother and my sister wanted to go on Matterhorn, and I was like, I am good. I will be on that bench. I will see you all later. This is me as an 8-year-old being like, I'm pretty solid on this. And then even we went on Astro Orbiter at one point, and I didn't realize it went up more. And my sister's behind me like, make it go up. And I'm like, nah, I'm good right here. I was not a good theme park person at all to start off. And then it wasn't until way later in life, I finally came to Florida for the first time to visit a friend from high school who was working for Disney. And she was like, I will take you to Disney World. And I was like, I will take that action. And my first ever park down here in Florida was Animal Kingdom. It's back when Lilo and Stitch met there. And she took me there to meet Lilo and Stitch because I love Stitch. He's my favorite character.
I love Stitch
I was
too.
like,
yeah.
I was like, this is magical. And she's like, just you wait. And we went to Epcot, and because it's Epcot, I don't remember most of that. and then it became, all right, it's time to go to Magic Kingdom, because we had tickets to an event that I had never heard of. And I was like, what is happening? And it was Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. And so my first time experiencing Magic Kingdom was walking into the park and seeing Cinderella's castle lit up for the first, all the lights and stuff for Christmas. And there's a video of it somewhere of just me, I just broke down and started crying. And I was like, I want this as my life. And I went back to Boston, where I was living at the time. And I was like, this is this was magical. This is great. I want to go back there all the time. And at one point, one of my coworkers, where I worked at the New England Aquarium in Boston, and she banned all Disney from the office. She's like, stop bringing that crap in here. I was like, no. This is my personality now. And at one point she looks at me, it's like, you realize, Josh, that you can't live at Disney World. And I was like, you can't tell me what I can't do. And next thing you know, I've got the cats packed up in carriers, my entire life in boxes, and I'm moving to Florida. And I'm like, I don't know anybody here, but this is what's happening. And it was just pure magic. And then, you know, discovering all the parks down here and just learning this world, I was like, yes, this is everything I've ever wanted. It started with Disneyland. It ended at Disney World.
Interesting. So how old were you when you first came to Disney World, as you were describing?
I was 25.
25, okay.
I did not have that experience where your parents were like, we're going to Disney World. My parents were like, we're going to the backyard. We bought a plastic pool at Walmart. Have fun. Or
that experience at 8 years old at Disneyland, your dad trying to kind of win you guys over, right?
Yeah.
So 25, you came here to Disney World, and then how many years later did you move to Florida?
Oh, don't make me do math. I moved down here in 2014, so I would have been an age that is math. It was definitely, I think it was around 28, 29 that I moved down here, and I've been down here for 7 years now. So anyone who's good at math, I'm 36. I moved down here 7 years ago. Figure it out.
Got it. So you had a few years, you know, New England Aquarium or whatnot up there, where you were driving your boss and maybe your coworkers crazy with your Disney obsession that was budding, then blooming. Okay, got it. And I see all of your stuff behind you. Of course, this is a podcast, but we're on Zoom here recording, and I see you mentioned Stitch. Stitch is my favorite kind of Disney specific character. Mm-hmm. But of course, Disney as a company now owns Marvel and Star Wars, and I see at least two back there. BB-8 is my favorite Star Wars character. I see you got BB-8 back there representing, so I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on it's a whole separate podcast where we can talk about my obsession with Star Wars. But yeah, that's what's so funny is the bookshelf that's behind me. That's like people walk in, they're like, oh, you like a lot of things. Like reading is an obsession of mine, obviously Disney, and then it's a little bit further out of frame, but there's an entire shelf of books that I've written that is like it's weird to have books that you've written on your own shelf, but at the same time I'm like, wow, I did that. I made that happen, and people read those and say things about them.
Yeah, well, it's like if you're, you know, I'm not a sports person. I don't have good coordination, but I have a lot of respect for people that play sports, and you know, they have their trophies and their plaques, so it's like that.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's your accomplishments. You should be proud of that. Absolutely. So one last thing I want to touch upon, from your kind of intro of your theme park experiences, your early theme park experiences, is you mentioned Disneyland at 8. So, and you mentioned going to Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. I've been to that party as well. All the cookies are awesome, and the special like your Space Mountain with the basically. I don't know if you experienced it, but when I went, I've only been once about 2 years ago. They had Trans-Siberian Orchestra playing on Space Mountain, which is epic. Oh yeah, it's epic. It's so cool.
I'm so mad now. I'm gonna call.
Yeah.
I demand to see Walt's frozen head. I'd like to talk about this.
So I don't know if they're doing it I don't even know what they're calling that party this year. It's not the same. It doesn't have all the same things. Thanks COVID. But you know, I don't know if they're going to do that music. But you know, and I know for their Mickey's Not So Scary, they usually have like all the lights off and no nothing. It's all completely in the dark and. You know, and all that, even darker than usual, I should say. But anyways, but yeah, fun times. But you mentioned seeing Cinderella's castle all dressed up. So have you ever been to Disneyland in November, December, like during the holiday?
I have. So when I first moved down to Florida, I was on a huge, I don't want to call it a health kick, but at one point with especially the work that I was doing, I realized I was very unhealthy. I was really unhappy with my health and my wellness. And I started running, and I discovered Run Disney events.
Oh.
And so I started doing a lot of those. And of course they do, you know, the coast to coast challenge and all that. And I'm like, well, I guess this is an excuse to go to California. So I've been able to, I go to California as much as possible to go back and visit my roots, but really Disneyland, because their churros are superior and I will fight anyone. So and being able to go out there during all those seasons. So I got to see the new, like when California did their first overlay for Halloween in Cars Land and all that, but seeing what they do for like Small World and the castle and all of that during Christmas at Disneyland, it just makes my heart so happy because it's such a different experience being a theme park fan, a Disney fan, going out and seeing the original park that Walt walked through and all that, and getting to see and what I love about Out There, which is just way out of the realm of topic, like Disney World, you come out here and you see a cast member, you'll probably never see them again when you revisit, even if it's the next day. Disneyland, you develop such great relationships there that I know that provided, they still have a job, I can go to X point in Disneyland and I will find this person. And if I'm hoping to go back there in November once the haunt season is over, and if I can just find them and give them the biggest like COVID friendly hug ever, I'm so excited for that because I made so many great friends out there during those times. And I mean, the stories I could tell of my theme park excursions would boggle most mind. Like that could be its own book that I should probably get on top of writing, but I'm a slacker, so who knows?
No, I agree with what you said there about kind of the more kind of intimacy, so to speak, of Disneyland. I've got a friend, her name is Anne. She's amazing. She is a waitress at Blue Bayou. She's worked there for 40 years. And they've offered to promote her to be a manager. She's like, no, I'm good. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I always request her, and she gives me a big hug when I come in there. And she's amazing service. She's so nice. She brings little extras and all that. Just little things.
Oh yeah,
get her in trouble. She's treating people that she likes nicely. And all that.
Of course.
Anyway, she's awesome. She's awesome. But so I know I get what you're saying there. So now you said you have been to Disneyland during the holidays. So you've been there like in the evening and seen it all.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So because the reason why I ask is because you were blown away by Cinderella Castle and going to the Very Merry Christmas Party. But I love Disney World, I do. But Disneyland Christmas versus Disney World Christmas, Disney World does not hold a candle. Like Magic Kingdom does not hold a candle to Disneyland dressed up for Christmas.
Honestly, for a lot of things, because I was a Disney World purist until I went to Disneyland as an adult, and I was like, oh, okay, I see you with your stuff. And again, I think it just feels more like family because like I experience like certain thing again, it's being able to find the same people over and over again and watching the same entertainment and the relationships that I've developed out there, even and like the people that are like out there. I feel like there's more magic out there and more magical moments and even just like weird simple things. Like one of my favorites, it drove one of my friends nuts. She lives out in California. She did visit Disneyland online. She's like, why does everyone love you so much? And I'm like, because I don't know. And we were at breakfast at Carnation Cafe. I ordered it. It was during a Run Disney weekend, so I was like just eating everything. And I ordered an extra side of bacon, and I like woofed it down the second it got dropped. And the waitress came by, and she's like, "Oh, your bacon's all gone." And I was like, "Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. This big yellow dog came and took it all." And she was like, "Well, that's not okay." And she disappeared, and she came back with more bacon. And I'm like, this is the life right here. And my friends look at me like, why does this keep happening to you? And I'm like, it's magic. And I mean, not to say that like I've had really great, wonderful magic moments out here in Florida, but something just feels more special out in Disneyland. And I'm sure Walt Disney World enthusiasts are going to come for my head on the Twitters about this, but
yeah, because you're here in Florida. Yeah, I know. I can understand. I mean, I've lived here in Florida for 3 years. I've spent a lot of time at Disney. I grew up going to Disney World. Because I grew up in New Jersey. I was the East Coast, go to Florida on spring break, go for holidays. And I've been in Disney World going there for years. But I moved to California. I lived in California for 20 years as an adult. I've spent a lot of time at Disneyland. Literally, I've been there probably across hundreds of days over numerous years. Pass holder for a long time. My first time ever going to Disneyland I was in my mid to late 20s. And for years, I'd never been to Disney, period. And I basically written off Disney. Like, I'm an adult now. Disney's for kids. I don't have kids. I'm not a family person. I don't have a family. And some friends dragged me to Disneyland. Like, no, we're going to show you. And it was in November. So my first visit ever to Disneyland, holidays, all dressed up, Haunted Mansion Holiday, which is like the best temporary overlay ever.
Yes.
And I was just like, okay, sold on Disney. I'm good with Disney for life. And I've been a huge fan ever since, been at D23. And so going to Disneyland, especially the holidays, it reinvigorated my love of Disney as an adult and kind of, totally reset me on that. So, but anyways, so let's, well, I'm sure we'll talk more about Disney, but let's dive into what is really core to the mission of our podcast, of our channel, which is facing fear and facing negativity and fighting negativity. You already talked about when you were 8 years old. Well, there we go, talking about Disneyland again. Being afraid of the Haunted Mansion, being like, I'm not going on the Matterhorn, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe it was that trip, or maybe it's been something since then. But tell me about, of all time, any theme park or regional park in the world, what attraction has scared you the most over the years?
So when it comes down to it, one that I looked at and I was like, what is happening right now? It was when, so again, I spent a good deal of time in my life in Boston. And at one point, my older sister was like, let's do a Six Flags day. And I'm like, I'm down. Let's do it. It was when Goliath opened at Six Flags New England. It was that we went the year it opened. And my sister's like, let's do it. And I'm like, are you sure? Because look at that. And she's like, no, we're doing it. I'm like, okay. That's one that I was like, I'm not. And at that point, I had gotten over a lot of my fear of I got peer pressured. I self peer pressured out of the fear of roller coasters, because prior to all of that, I had been a part of an educational theater troupe, and I actually took over as the artistic director. And me being me was like, oh, we should do a cast bonding trip at Six Flags. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And I forgot that I was terrified of everything. And I ended up going on my first upside down roller coaster, my first probably ever roller coaster at that point in my life, just because I didn't want my cast to know that I was terrified of them. And after that, I was like, oh, I love this. But it was on Goliath, which if anyone doesn't know it, it starts you off and it takes you up 90 feet backwards. It's probably higher than that. I'm probably like completely butchering the height, but it's really high. And you go up backwards and it's like, all right, we're going to launch you now. And you go down, you go upside down and around and up another pillar. And they're like, okay, all of that you're going to do forwards now. Best of luck to you. And I'm watching this happen over the course of like a 45-minute wait with my sister. And I'm like, no, I'm not all about this. And this was pre like, hey, you should take all the stuff out of your pocket. So we finally get on the ride. And I'm like, I'm going to lose everything. And what's so funny is after we got off, we watched somebody lose their cell phone. We watched the demise of their cell phone on that ride. And I was like, this is brilliant, because it didn't happen to me. But oh man, it scared me to death. And I have not ridden it since, simply because I left New England. But I would definitely get on it again now, because I loved it.
Got it. Okay, all right. So lots to unpack there. So Goliath at Six Flags New England is a Vekoma Gib, which Gib stands for Giant Inverted Boomerang. So I don't know if you've ever been to like Knott's, for example. They have, or at least I don't know if it's still there. I think they took it out, but the first generation boomerang ride, which is not suspended like the one you went on, Goliath. It's actually above, just right above the track or on the track, like a conventional old style roller coaster. That was the first generation of that sort of ride where it gets pulled up, drops down, goes through a cobra roll and then a loop, and then goes up the other side. A ramp gets pulled up that one and goes through it all backwards. There have been several iterations of that. That was the original. Then there was a suspended one just like that, or inverted as it's referred to, boomerang. But both of those are pretty similar in that the ramps that you're talking about, the first one you get pulled up and the second one you go up in the middle, though they're kind of angled. Whereas the one you went on the most extreme version, which is taller. That's why I call it the giant inverted boomerang. And the two ramps are vertical. So you get two vertical drops in the beginning and halfway through. So you went on the most extreme one. So I can understand why you're scared of it. I mean, it's intense. I've actually rode that same ride right when it opened, because it was not originally built at Six Flags New England. It was built at Six Flags Magic Mountain as a ride called Deja Vu. And I rode it opening year back, that was around 2001 or so. It had a lot of issues and it wasn't popular. So they decided to move it to a lower tier, less popular Six Flags Park, Six Flags New England. And it's been there ever since. And rumors are that it's not long for this world, period. They're probably going to take it out pretty soon and get rid of it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they just have issues with it, and it's not the most popular ride, and it's rough, and it's 20 years old and all that. Any case, so you were
now
afraid
I feel
of it.
old, so thank you.
And that's all right. It's all right. I aim to please. So you were really afraid of it. You already kind of answered a couple of my questions. So this is great. You're doing great. Talking about how afraid you were, getting on it. You're like nervous about losing stuff out of your pockets, and then you get on the ride And it sounds like you didn't lose anything, although you kind of laughed that someone else lost their cell phone. And then you got off of it. And it sounds like, so you said you loved it.
Yeah, like we got off, and I remember just looking at my sister like, that was a thing that just happened. I mean, at that point, I'd really moved past a lot of my fear of roller coasters, but that was when I looked at it and I was like, wow, no, who would do this? Now, it's learning to take those chances. Especially as like someone who's traveled a lot, like you put your life in the hands of an airplane, you reach a point where you're just like, if this is how I go, then okay. It was a fun ride.
So gotcha. But so bottom line is, you enjoyed it and you've enjoyed riding it since then a number of times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then you were also saying kind of moreover that this sort of broke your fear of roller coasters in general.
Mm-hmm.
When you've been on coasters you've never been on before since then, you don't really have that same fear? It's more you're looking forward to it?
Yeah, it's more like, wow, I'm really ready for this ride. Like we in Florida had a couple of rides open up pre-pandemic, and I, knowing the theme park world enough, was like, I will ride that in 6 months. I will see you then. And so like post-pandemic, I rode Hagrid's for the first time over at Universal.
Nice.
And I typically avoid any POV rides or any videos and stuff. And experiencing that for the first time, I will not go into why I do not fully support the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, because J.K. Rowling is not my favorite human being.
I understand.
But looking at like the ride itself, knowing nothing about it, my first time on it, my friend was laughing at me because I probably let out more expletives than would have been allowed on a family friendly ride,
right?
Because I knew nothing about it, and all of a sudden it's just launch, and then you're going backwards, and then all of a sudden you drop, and I'm like, what is happening? It just makes it so much more fun. And then we did Velocicoaster for the first time when they're doing soft opens in Florida. People came back to me like, what was it like? And I was like, I don't remember. I was like, Raptor. Oh no, Raptor. That's the ride. And it's just like, I'm suddenly excited, especially seeing how the technology has advanced over the years from when theme parks first started really becoming a theme to what they've evolved to now, and how everything's evolving more and more and more. I'm like, yes, I'm so excited because I remember getting on Velocicoaster and I was like, wait, this ride goes upside down, and upside down roller coasters, you're supposed to be strapped in over your shoulder harnesses.
Right.
This is the shoulder harness. Am I going to die? And I was like, cool, let's do this. And so it's definitely like turned me into somebody who's like, yeah, I'm really excited to see what we can do with it, and watching technology advance. I'm like, yes, let's go. I'm excited for the next big thing. So let's
That's
do
awesome.
it.
Definitely. It sounds like one impact of you riding Goliath a number of years ago is you were really scared. You got over that fear. You loved it. And that's helped you to just enjoy theme parks, enjoy coasters, and really have the positive side of things, the adrenaline, the endorphins, the smiles, the laughs, and all that. So but besides that, though, conquering your fears on Goliath, has that had any other impacts on your life?
It's around that same time is when I found a huge shifting point in my life. So my high school and college job, I was working in a grocery store, which is not exciting at all. And you're like, how did you go from I started off there as a bag boy. Now I'm part of creating haunted attractions. And you're like, where did that jump happen? I think a lot of that inspired me to face a lot more, because I grew up in small towns. Even when I lived in California, I lived in a small town. Moving up to Massachusetts, I lived in a small town. And part of me was really content with that life. And I was like, I'm going to work in this grocery store, and I'm going to work my way up. And I, went from bagger to cashier to customer service to doing all this. And now I'm an assistant manager. I realized that I was just very complacent in just the life that I lived. I'm like, this is fine. Everything's fine. And the rest of the world is scary. So I'm going to stay in this small bubble and I'll be okay. And bursting that bubble. And it sounds weird equating that to just riding roller coasters, but you're like, once you face that fear and embrace that, there's an entire world of possibility open to you. And I started branching out, and I started a business and started doing speaking engagements and educating people and moving out into the world. And I realized, wow, there's so much more outside this bubble. And if I just embrace that fear, finish that weight, and just jump on that ride and take it. There's so much more out there. And that inspired me to start a business, that inspired me to move out of my comfort zone of small town Massachusetts into slightly bigger town Massachusetts, into I'm just going to move to the other side of the country in a downward way. Just everything beyond that. I'm like, yeah, if you look fear in the face and say, all right, let's do this, so much more is on the other side of that. And if we learn to embrace and accept that, there's so much possibility. And it's terrifying. Moving down to Florida was terrifying. Starting a business was terrifying. Getting laid off from everything and furloughed was terrifying. But if you just embrace it and say, all right, we're going to move forward in that line and we're going to get on that ride. Once we move beyond that, you're like, yeah, this is it. And just chasing that same feeling in life is really what gets it for you. And I'm so happy to like take those steps. And even though, again, everything's scary, it's worth it. It's worth jumping into your fear and really saying, yeah, we're going to do this.
So that's fantastic. So basically facing your fears in Goliath and realizing what you got out of facing those fears, the other side of it, that positive side of it, that helped you to embrace life and take more risks, it sounds like, deal with scary, anxiety-invoking situations, like you said, moving and dealing with job loss and furloughs, because life happens, but you're able to better deal with those things because of you had faced your fears previously.
Yeah. And it's, you look at you as you're standing in line for that coaster and you're watching it happen, you're like, no. But you realize there's so much more safety behind every move that you make. And it's scary. You think you're jumping without a safety net, but the world built one in for you. And those engineers built one in for you. You just have to embrace it. And I can't stress enough how terrifying it is. All the things that I've done in my life, moving to the point where I am now, some of it's been scary. Some of it's been the absolute worst. For you, like, why is this? I look at the entire pandemic and I'm like, why is this happening to me? But you realize it's not just you; it's everyone. And it's all of a sudden your world has exploded, and a lot of it, it can stem back to just simply waiting in line and riding a roller coaster changes everything.
We talk about sometimes when we talk about these sort of topics with our guests about the concept of fear training, and what I mean by that is training yourself to deal with fear. And you can think of analogs, like athletic analogs, like, for example, someone that is going to be an open water swimmer, like an ocean swimmer, or do that 1/3 of that part of a triathlon, for example. They're not necessarily going to start in the open water in the oceans with rip currents and waves and all that. They're going to start in a lap pool. They're going to be a good swimmer to begin with. They're going to start in a perfectly flat, no waves, safe lap pool, and train themselves and get to the point where they can start swimming in the ocean, dealing with temperature differences and all that as well. Not all oceans are warm, and again, dealing with waves, dealing with currents, even animals, sharks, crabs, whatever, it can bite you, fish that can bite you, all those risks. You don't necessarily start with those risky situations. Athletes, they start at the base and move upward. Same thing with skiing. You don't do a double black diamond first. You start off with a simple one. And so it's the same thing with fear. You by facing fears, well, it doesn't have to be this way. Some people, they go through a really hard part of their life early on where they deal with major fear and anxiety in the real world. And that can be tough. And a lot of times, unfortunately, those types of situations, those people, they wind up turning to drugs and alcohol. Some of them break past that and still succeed, but a lot of them, they have short lives, suicide, and there's a lot of hard knocks there. For people like yourself and myself and David and other people that we've had on the show, we are very fortunate. Again, none of us have perfect lives, but we've been able to train to face fear in a safe and a fun way. Riding coasters, going into haunted houses, going on drop towers and all these things where they're safe. Accidents happen, but they're very, very rare. So they're, nothing's 100% safe, but very safe. And we have fun doing it. And we train our minds to realize, hey, if it's something that is intimidating, doesn't mean that it's going to end in some awful conclusion, an awful result. Things can go bad, but things can also go good. And things can go so good that you get endorphins and adrenaline out of this thing that you're afraid of. 30 years ago, when I started riding coasters, really became a coaster enthusiast, riding my first, upside down coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey, where I grew up. I wasn't thinking about this stuff. I was thinking about, hey, these things are fun. But But as
Yeah.
time has gone by, and then meeting David several years ago and really thinking about, wow, yeah, theme parks are therapeutic. And so I'm so glad to see you like, so many others have had this sort of, really deep and meaningful pivot in your life because of this. So that's awesome. So in addition to, enjoying all these coasters and these rides and being able to face fear in your life, is there any other ways you can think of where theme parks have had a positive impact on your life?
I mean, so much. And even like what actually just popped into my head, you flash back to 2016 in Orlando, especially in the summer of 2016, we were not having a great time in
No.
June 2016. I remember, of course, June 12th, 2016, waking up to text messages and, panicked Facebook messages from friends and stuff being like, are you okay? What is going on? And I thankfully did not go out that night, waking up and finding out what was going on with Pulse nightclub. And, this is something that at the time was 5 miles down the road from where I lived. And I was like, what is happening? And seeing what was going on, weirdly enough, my one and only instinct was like, I just need to not be in the real world. And the very next day after the Pulse nightclub shootings, went with a friend to Animal Kingdom. And it was the most just therapeutic thing in the world. And we went and did Festival of the Lion King and just kind of went and embraced just all of this, and seeing all of that was really weird. And then the very next day after that, I put together a bunch of just little Tootsie Pops of all things with a little note that said, thank you for making magic when the world has seemed to run out. Went to Magic Kingdom and just started handing those out to cast members.
Oh, wow.
And was like, wow, first off, thank you. Like, everything is terrible right now. And you are here continuing to make magic, going into the parks and doing stuff like that, being a part of that and seeing just how much harder everyone was working to make magic was phenomenal. And that really did it for me. And it showed me just the meaning and the purpose of all this magic. And I went to Universal and did the same thing. Theme parks were my escape, and I went to escape the real world. I would go and do work. I would, like, too many distractions at home, go to Disney, which sounds weird, but believe it or not, productive. Being like, not only seeing the magic that these people are creating every single day, not just at Disney, but at Universal as well. And all that they're willing to do to create the best experience possible, not just the best vacation, but to put that extra touch into it, even when everything is crashing and burning around you. Even seeing the parks reopen after the pandemic, you're like, wow, these people are so passionate about what they do. And I would love to find that passion for myself. And when I walk into my everyday experience, I'm like, yeah, let's make this magic. And every job that I've had since, even though, I'm not working for Disney or Universal, but I'm going to create that. I'm going to find a way to create that magic and to really enhance that experience. And it's changed the way that I view a lot of things, to know and to see that these people know that Disney is their escape and Universal is their escape and theme parks are their escape. All that they do to try to enhance that, as long as you're not being a raging pain, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that you're having a great time. And I think that is like just such a way to live your life. And I mean, I've worked in customer service my entire life in some way, shape, or form. I've tried to apply that sort of Disney theme park logic to it. And if I can say yes, if I can add an extra touch that you weren't expecting, then I'm going to do it. And I've done that in my everyday life. And I've just seen how that just switches the expectation for people. And it's just so amazing. It's created such a change for me, and it's been such a great escape. I can't thank it enough for that. And I wish I could just give all the cast members a huge hug if I could, but that's not allowed right now. But someday it'll happen.
For sure. Yeah. A couple things I want to unpack there. First of all, you mentioned the tragedy and really the terrorist attack that was the Pulse nightclub shooting. Absolutely tragic, and one of the most awful events that's happened in recent time. I was not living here in Florida at the time. I moved here about 2 years later. I have many friends here and had friends here. I'm gay, and so I'm part of the LGBTQ community. And so I certainly was hearing about it through those channels. I have friends that were actually there that night, as I found out. And, and that was awful. And I don't know, you may remember this or realize this. that was not the only tragedy that occurred in Orlando that week. That same week is when that poor baby, that little kid, was killed by that alligator right there, right by Grand Floridian.
Very next day, and then the day before was the singer that was. And I remind people every year on my Facebook, I'm like, this is going into this particular 3-day period was not great for us. So many of us are carrying scars from that because, again, I was supposed to go out that night and I declined the invitation and did my own thing. And I had friends who were there. I had friends who were lost. And then seeing that the ongoing tragedy of that weekend, it's a lot to take on and it's a lot to think about. And again, it's, we live in this world of magic, watching people work through all of that to create those experiences. And because again, I went to Magic Kingdom the day following the shootings, and it was also and I think when I finally ended up there, it was the day after, it was after the shootings, it was after the tragedy at the Grand Floridian. And it was just like, how are any of you doing this right now? Some of them, I handed off my little trinket of like, thank you for being here. Some people were just very like, like I am the British soldier guarding the palace. And others, we shared those just wonderfully magic moments. We shared hugs, we shared tears. And I'm so thankful for that because, and seeing what the parks did, I don't, you weren't here for it, but when Magic Kingdom did the unofficial moment of silence at Magic Kingdom, which, and I will get choked up forever talking about this. It was the first time since the parks opened that people from various lands were allowed into Town Square, were allowed into Cinderella Castle Square. They cut the music.
Oh, wow.
And there was this, it was post-fire, and it was just this moment of silence. All these people come together to share this moment. It was just the craziest thing that I've ever seen. And I've never experienced the Magic Kingdom dead silent before, but there we were. And then Universal, they've got the window above horror makeup show, if you've ever seen that.
Yes.
With the names.
Oh.
And it's the names of the Universal team members that were lost.
Oh,
and
wow. I didn't know that. I'll have to look for that next time I'm there.
It's if you're standing the Hollywood like sort of photo op just off to the side going to the parade route loop.
Yeah.
Right above that, but it's messages from the sky or something like that, and it's truly magical. It's something that hits close to me and I look at it every time I see there and seeing my friends' names up there, and I'm like, this is cool. And they took the time to really address this and make it a part of the magic and make it a part of the legacy of these parks. And I think that is amazing. So, I mean, all of it, and it's, for all of the flaws in the theme park communities in Florida, there's also the really great parts of what they do. And sometimes people don't realize, and like even people walking through, and they may, like regular tourists may look at that window and think nothing of it, but it's become a part of them. And maybe they'll ask, like, what is this all about? And then they can learn. And I think that it's really great that we're not, making it some passing fancy of, this is a thing. This is a part of our history now. And this is a part of who we are. And yes, like especially Disney is designed to ignore the real world and let you escape that, but they're also willing to acknowledge it as well. And I think that's really amazing. And again, those people that create those magical moments, walked into work, and even today, post-pandemic, went back to work and are working so hard to create these magical moments, even though people are being kind of awful. Yeah. It's great to see that.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And you were talking about that's awesome, by the way, what you did that, I know it was not something huge, but it's not necessarily what the gift is, so to speak. It's the thought that counts, giving those Tootsie Pops to the team members at Universal, the cast members at Disney. And to your point, this is what I was alluding to with not just the Pulse tragedy, but what happened at the Grand Floridian, just how you were saying how the cast members there at Magic Kingdom, for example, right, a stone's throw from the Grand Floridian, how they could, between all of this stuff that was going on that had happened, how they could still do those magical moments. And it's people like you that were there to thank them and appreciate them. That helps, keep them going. Because again, when people are at theme parks, I think when you have the people you're referring to, the people that complain or say, I paid $3,000 for this vacation and I deserve this, and your pass holes and things like that. I think, I'm a theme park goer. I have APs to all the local parks here in Florida. I've got a Cedar Fair pass now. I've got SeaWorld, everything. And I'm not a passhole. I try to be really appreciative, really good. And even if I have a customer service issue, I try to be really nice about it, because I know what these people go through. But a lot of people, they don't realize these are human beings. Yeah, they do these magical things, and they're smiling and all that, but they're human beings with their own fears and anxieties and problems and not making ends meet and all this stuff. So my hat off to you for doing what you did there. That, that's amazing. That just thinking to do that. That's so cool. You also brought up about the parks, how they are about escaping from the real world and getting a break from the real world. But yeah, the real world still exists, and there are connections with those parks. There are, people that died at Pulse that worked at Disney, worked at Universal, or Disney having this huge Star Wars connection now, owning Star Wars. What they did at Hollywood Studios when Carrie Fisher passed away, how amazing was that? I wish I could have been here for that. Yeah. And it's just, they don't forget about the real world. They commemorate it with tragedies like this. If there's one thing that our listeners at this part of our discussion here can take away from this is, a lot of our people that listen to the show, we're at the Coaster Challenge podcast. They're coaster fans, they're theme park fans. I know everyone, a lot of us are dealing with stresses and the pandemic and this and that. And you're going to the theme parks a lot because now you can, because things are opened up again. Disneyland's opened up again. Don't take your cast members, your team members, your employees at the parks for granted. Give them a Tootsie Pop. Thank them. Kind of akin to that, Josh, I have been, in the wake of the pandemic and everything else, I have been completely and utterly blown away by the level of customer service and engagement repeatedly by team members at Universal Orlando. I'm sure some of them are listening. I've got many friends that work for Universal, in Universal Orlando specifically, whether it be on the creative side or on the operations side. My hat's off to them. I've had some amazing, magical moments, not because I asked for them or I begged for them, just because, I'm just a positive person that's enjoying the parks, that's passionate about the parks. And I'm a big believer in karma. And I'm not going to go into the stories now because we're going way off on tangents here, and that's okay. Yeah. But, I've gotten re-rides just because the team member liked me and my friend that I was with, and we enjoying the conversation and our positivity. And got some re-rides and, just other things, and just great conversations and just great customer service. So it's not just Disney's that's doing that anymore. And, and it's amazing in light of what's going on in the world, the pandemic and everything else, that these team members have stepped up like they have. I mentioned haunts, so let's start talking about haunts. It's Halloween time. It's the season. It's my favorite season. So
indeed.
So you're not just a theme park fan like myself, and now apparently a coaster fan, thanks to Goliath. Yeah. You're also a haunt fan and involved in the industry. So I know you work for Scream and Stream, as we talked about earlier. Talk to me about the process of creating a haunt attraction. What's that like for you?
It's honestly, it's something I've never experienced before, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is, like, it was true for Scream and Stream. It's true for Halloween Horror Nights. The event ends, and most people are like, Halloween is over. It's time for Christmas. Not in the haunt industry. We're like, it's time for Halloween next year. And so I just very distinctly remember Halloween of 2020, when midnight struck and it became November 1st. All of a sudden, our owner, in a stroke of what he thought was brilliance and I became enraged about, suddenly starts playing Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Is like, no. And he's like, no, it's Christmas. And I'm like, no, it is still Halloween. And then all of a sudden conversation started of, what does Halloween 2020 look like, or 2022 look like, or what year is it? 2021.
2021.
I don't even know what day it is today, as per most of the emails I sent, so it's fine. I was like, I'm game for it. Like, I'm always ready for Halloween. The process of creating, it takes a lot. Like, we've been having these conversations, no lie, since November 1st of 2020. They were very small at first, but then as the new year rolled around, we're like, no, this is a real thing. We're ready to do this. Having been on the guest side of it for so many years, I went to Halloween Horror Nights for the first time in 2015 and fell in love. 5 years later, I'm in a pandemic and suddenly I'm working for a haunt myself. It's very interesting because the story is born and the idea is born. And then you're like, all right, we're going to roll we're going to roll with this. We're going to do this. And it just grows and grows and grows more and more as a giant snowball. And now we're at the point that, yeah, this is happening. This is the beast that we've created, and we're going to unleash it upon the world. And the process is so crazy because you think like, and even like looking at moving into the season, you're like, how soon is too soon to think about? Like, when do you worry about ticket sales? When do you worry about all of this? Because the normal world is not thinking about Halloween until maybe later in August, early September. Of course, Orlando, we're thinking about, according to Disney, we're thinking about Halloween now. You're like, no, we're thinking about it all the time. And when you work in, especially for me, I work in event coordination. I'm not only thinking about Halloween, I'm thinking about Christmas. I'm already thinking about Valentine's Day, which is a sad thing to say out loud, but that's the truth of it right now. It becomes your life for a very long time. Most people get into January and like, oh, Halloween's 10 months away. And we're like, no, this is happening now. We're stressed about this now. Let's go. So it's definitely a little bit crazy. You're having conversations at a time when people are like, why are you talking about scary stuff? It's Valentine's Day. It's a season of love. And I'm like, no, spooky, go. So it's a trip for sure.
So what do you think in terms of theme park haunts? What do you think what role do they have in helping people face fears? What does that look like for you? What do you think about that?
I think about my one of my friends who loves horror but is terrified of clowns. Watching her a couple years in a row coming to Halloween Horror Nights. First there was the Killer Clown Scare Zone, which I remember her walking into, and she was like, I'm gonna need a drink. And I was like, I got you covered. I know a bartender. We're gonna go visit her first. And then when we did the house the following year, just watching her be like, I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, you got this. I think especially when it comes to fear and horror, it's that rush of fear that we don't maybe want to admit it, but we really kind of are like, I like that feeling. Even this year with Scream and Stream, when I told her very early on before it was even announced, I was like, oh yeah, our theme this year is clowns versus zombies. And she's like, do you just hate me? And I was like, a little bit, maybe. I did not conceive this, but I'm just embracing it because I'm right there with you. I think it's just that feeling, that rush of adrenaline that we don't realize. Maybe a lot of us don't realize that we really enjoy that feeling. And once we finish it and come down from that high, we're like, yes, that. But again, I think it's like finding that natural high for all of us and being like, I'm going to embrace this. And I've seen people who have, I remember a friend of mine had never gone to Halloween Horror Nights before. She was not a horror fan, but when HHN brought in the Stranger Things IP, she was like, I love this show. I want to do it. And she latched on to me. She's like, I know you're an HHN pro. Show me the ropes. And I'm like, all right, welcome to the ADD that is me in a theme park during Halloween time. But just like follow me. It's not going to make sense. You're going to get your steps in, but follow this path and we got this. And watching her slowly evolve from somebody who's afraid of all of this to being like, yes, I love all of this. I love everything about this. I can't wait for next year. I've already got my pass the second it's available. It's so cool to see. And much like what David was talking about earlier and getting on that coaster for the first time, it just takes that one little push of this is what I want, like do this with me and take this journey with me. And I'm somebody who's done it and I promise you it'll be okay. And again, it's facing that fear and moving on and realizing that you can conquer so much more and seeing people really embrace that. And now, like both people I just talked about with clowns and HHN for the first time are both named Meg, and watching both those Megs take that journey into embracing their fear, I'm like, yes, you're a bigger person for it. Of course, Meg number 1, who's afraid of clowns, was like, when I finish Scream and Stream this year, you better meet me with a shot of tequila. And I was like, I've got you. I'll find a way to make that happen.
That's awesome. Speaking of, I do want to call attention to this. My understanding, Josh, is that Scream and Stream, part of how it was born last year during the pandemic was to help and to source all of this labor, this talented labor, whether it be scare actors or designers or just people that are about themed entertainment, all of these people that have been furloughed from Disney and Universal, even the for your Jolly Creek event, which I went to, thank you for the media day invite for, which was super fun, where you had the Glen Floridian Orchestra there working or, playing music, and they did a great job. Giving all these people that are out of work, maybe not full-time jobs, but giving them something and letting them delight people again, which they love doing, many of them. So tell me about what you guys did there to help out these people that were desperate in
Yeah,
certain
so
ways.
again, like, so last year was our first year, especially with Scream and Stream. So obviously we were not perfect, and we completely own that, and we learned from that. And I think what's really great about our ownership, Chris and Kelly, who a husband wife team, who small business, owned this event and created this event. They're always open and willing to learn. One of their biggest things is Chris's background is in this community, in the theme park community, and he really loves and embraces everything about it. And to see not only so many people hurting for entertainment during these times, but also the people hurting for jobs, it was really cool to see them say, first off, for Halloween, like, people love Halloween. What can we do to make Halloween happen still? Scream and Stream is born. All right, we get the news that Grand Floridian Society Orchestra, who's been a staple at Grand Floridian for who knows how long, is now out of the job. What can we do? What can we do to bring that entertainment to people, to not only create those jobs and to have these events born from that, is truly spectacular. And so many of our operators and performers were either Horror Nights veterans or theme park veterans, or people who got their first break into this world for the first time. It was really cool to see that, and to see them want to continue to create these opportunities for people. And again, there's a lot of growing pains from it. I mean, again, we were out in the middle of nowhere in basically Murderville, Kissimmee. Did I enjoy getting eaten alive by mosquitoes? No, but this random guy from Twitter was like, "Hey, I need a job," and they're like, "You know what? You got it." They helped out so many of us, and to provide all of us with those opportunities, I think was really, really great. The Orlando theme park community, there's people out there that maybe not be the biggest fans of us because they're so, I don't know the nicest way to say this, but they don't realize that the theme park entertainment sometimes is not the end all be all, and there's so much more out there. And if you,
Right.
again, you explore that unknown and embrace and check it out. And, maybe in our first year we tried our best. We did the best we could. I think it was a lot of fun. Was it really corny and hokey? Yeah, we embraced that 80s B movie mentality, and we're like, this is where we are. But we've now evolved. What we're bringing to you this year, I look at like Ridley Scott, Alien, great movie. Aliens, that's the jam. I'm not.
Yes.
I shouldn't say this isn't the Aliens of theme park haunts, but we embraced it all, and we looked at all. And Chris is very in tune to social media, and he's looking at all of those comments, all those feedback, and yeah, we're seeing the positive, but we're taking a look at the negative, and where did that come from? Where can we build on that negative? And that's exactly what we've done for everybody. So we've created not only this great opportunity for people that needed jobs, we've created, great opportunities for people that want that spook and that haunt. And then we've learned and we've grown from it. And that's what's been really, really cool to see.
That's awesome. We're in the middle, and we're still going to be talking some more about your involvement on the other side of, not as a guest, but as a creator and managing an independent haunt. We want to support the industry, and we're talking to you about looking at how fear can be faced in theme park haunts and things like that. But I'm so glad that we're having you in this interview today, because I love that your organization has done so much good for all of these people that are out of work and struggling. And again, that's amazing. And I'm so glad that can help you guys out with get the word out there about this relatively new event. Again, you're only in your second year, because you guys are doing so much good for these people, giving them jobs and giving them an outlet. So many scare actors, they couldn't be a scare actor last year, which is, I can see that even being depressing for people, because they love it and it's so different. And, and then on the same time, again, providing those of us that love horror and love haunts. The only thing I did haunt wise last year, even though I'm in the theme park capital, was Scream and Stream. There was much available. So because of the pandemic. So, again, kudos to you guys. So talk to me more about creating haunt. How do you find balance in creating a given haunted house or haunted attraction, about making it just the right amount of scary, not too scary and not, where it's not enough scary? How do you get that balance? What do you do for that?
So one of the things that was really cool about last year, and what I loved about one of the positions, was spieling to guests about safety and stuff, but that we'd have delays like any theme park attraction does, and getting to talk to people. And you had a lot of kids that were experiencing their first haunt ever with Scream and Stream. It was because they found this safety in that they're in their car. And so you've got kind of this shell around you. And it was really cool just chatting with them and getting to break that facade of, I'd start off like with my weird little spiel, but then, we've got a minute to kill. We're going to let's have a one-on-one human conversation. And seeing them face that fear for the first time. And then because especially the way we were designed last year on a loop, that you saw people leave and you saw them come back, and getting to see these kids that were super scared, they got to face that fear and, embrace as Elsa would say, they went into the unknown and they came out the other side okay. And really getting to see that was really cool. And as we've crafted this year, we've kept that in mind. Like, what can we do to, especially as we're catering, not only to the haunt community, but we've really now focused more towards on the family dynamic of coming to a haunt for the first time, and what can we do to make them excited about experiencing this. And as we've, it created that interactive element that we now have this year, they've got a lot more control. And I think it's really cool that we're, again, this year, we're going to see a whole new community that maybe has never thought about Halloween the way Orlando does. Because Oviedo, it's not too far outside of Orlando, but in Florida, we all live in our own individual bubbles. But to bring that, and to even like working in the mall, what's really cool is we've got the Scream and Stream storefront with the pictures of the zombies and the clowns, and watching kids walk by that, and they're like, what is going on here? And they see the imagery and they're like, wait, I can shoot a zombie. I can shoot. Maybe something they would have initially been terrified of. They're like, I've got some control in this situation. And so not only you have that little bit of safety that is your car, but you've now, you've got the laser gun that you're able to shoot at the clowns and zombies. You've got a little bit more control. And maybe that, in a couple of years' time, maybe next year, they'll be like, I can move on to not, Hallow Scream or Not So Scary, and really start to, embrace the horror roots that I think every kid should be introduced to sooner rather than later. I was introduced to horror at a very young age, and I'm like, yes, this is my life now. But watching them face that and creating something that helps balance that family friendly and a little bit of horror, and there's control in it, so you don't feel so overwhelmed by the terror that you're feeling. You can embrace and control and have a part of the action. What's really cool is we got the laser guns this year. The performers are all wearing these targets on their chests. They know when they've been hit, and they react to that, and they see, if the more I'm engaged in this, the further away the scary things get. So I'm going to keep doing that to keep the scary thing away. And it's going to be so much fun to see. I'm so like, we did the play test a few months ago where we had some, podcasters and vloggers come through and stuff. And it was great to see experienced haunters, but I'm so excited for those first kids to go through. If I could just walk with the car and be like, you having fun? You having a good time? I would do that hardcore.
That's interesting. Okay, very cool. So maybe this relates to my next question. Talk to me about why you guys decided to have your event again this year with everything else going on.
And what's so funny is we a couple times went back and forth, should we look at becoming a walking experience? We realized that we had honed into something very unique. There, out of the pandemic, a lot of drive-through events were born out in California. They had the drive-through Stranger Things experience and all of that. And we're like, why try to be like everybody else? We are full of walk-through haunted experiences. What if you created an experience? Not like last year we were in the car because it was a pandemic and it was a necessity.
Right.
This year we looked at story and we said, what if being in your car wasn't a byproduct of a pandemic? What if it was a part of the story? And it created something completely different, because again, kids feel a little bit safer. People who may be a little bit scared to go through haunted houses feel a little bit safer. But at the same time, we learned at our play test that it felt a little bit more claustrophobic, because it's on you to keep the bad thing away. And so we went back and forth a couple times about becoming a walkthrough, and we're like, nah, we've got something different here. We've got something special. What can we do to improve it? And again, we were all about improvement, not only the experience for the contractors working for us, but for the guests coming through. Sure, could we be another walkthrough haunted attraction? Yeah, that's easy. Creating an experience around a car, not so much, because not only are you creating the story for this environment that you're putting people in, but why are they in a car? Please and thank you. And we had to come up with that. And we did it. And again, working with Patrick Braillard, who of HHN fame, it was really cool to see, all right, here's the theme we want. people aren't walking through, they need to be in a car, figure it out. And sitting down and doing all of that was really, really cool. It's great to be something different. And so you've got Hallowscream, which has got all of its walkthrough on your feet. You've got HHN, all of it walkthrough on your feet. Let's be different. Let's be unique. And I think having that little bit of a unique factor, and even like getting people to understand, like, yeah, it's a haunted house that you drive through. They're like, I don't get it. Like, well, that's why you need to buy a ticket and come do it. And please understand that it is priced per car, not per person. That started off as a running joke for us. Now it's like we get those questions more often than I care to admit. But it's great because it causes people to question, and it's not just another Halloween event. It's something different, and we like that about ourselves. We like being a little bit different and weird, and we embrace it.
That's awesome, and that totally makes sense. In terms of really answers my question. But you guys you're pivoting yourself as this unique, or putting yourself as this unique haunt. You were like one of the few last year, and you kind of started doing the drive-through thing, figured things, what works, what doesn't. You can perfect on that. Here we are in the second year where you're going to do that drive-through again because it differentiates you. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm excited, especially some of the things you're sharing here. Last year, you guys had the event as we talked about earlier, at Boggy Creek Adventures. And this year, you're doing it at Oviedo Mall. Talk to me about why you wound up moving the venue from Boggy Creek to Oviedo.
So, I mean, Boggy Creek was great to us. Again, they really embraced, because what we learned this year as we were looking to move to a new venue, a lot of people do not understand when you say, I want to do a Halloween event. It's a drive-through haunted house. They're like, what, are you okay? Do we need to get you help? Boggy Creek was good, but we looked at the experience, not only the guests, but the contractors working for the event, the performers, the operators, all of that. And a lot of the big feedback was, this is middle of nowhere. Especially like for me, I learned through Google and experience that mosquitoes love O negative blood, which I have. I was a walking mosquito bite through all of it. And we were competing with wildlife. We had snakes falling out of trees. We had bobcats. We had mosquitoes. We're like, this was a great environment for the story that we were telling, which was Night at the Die-In, which was you're driving into an abandoned drive-in movie theater, and this cult has taken over. But we looked at our story this year and said, a swamp is great, but it's not working for the story that we want to tell. So we started looking at more urban environments and more industrial environments. And we looked around all of Florida. And of course, the biggest thing for us is we need space, and giant parking lots are great. We reached out to the Oviedo Mall, which has a great parking lot because it's a mall parking lot. And malls, as we know them, have changed a whole lot from what they were when they first started. And we reached out to Oviedo Mall, and we met with the director of operations there, the general manager, Judy DeRozier, who's she's game for anything. And we're like, hey, we want to put a drive-through haunted house in your parking lot for 7 weeks where people can shoot zombies and clowns. And she was like, do it. And it was really great. And it's so exciting to do that and to move into this new environment, to tell this new story. Because not only are we getting to, tell the story we want in the appropriate environment that really fits into what we're going for, but it also creates more of an experience. Because again, Boggy Creek is really great, but you go out there and they had a restaurant and everything, but your options were very limited. People were very nervous about getting out of their cars. So they came, they drove through, they left. And a lot of people felt cheated because we drove out to this place. We did have to wait in a line, which is, again, feedback we got. Now we're doing time ticketing this year.
Smart.
We wanted to create more of an experience. So if you did want to do more, what can we do to have more? And the Oviedo Mall created that. We have been able to work with a lot of the vendors and tenants within the mall to create more of an experience. So it's like, if you just want to come and drive through and leave, great. But if you want to make a full night of it, you've got District Eat and Play, where you can go do horror themed escape rooms. That you can do axe throwing, where you can actually throw axes at zombies and clowns that are projected out there on the targets. We've got Calliope Street, which does the wine and painting, and they're doing something really cool. They're creating a zombie juice wine slushy. Go to Regal and see a scary movie that's in theaters. We've got photography studio, Amaduzzi Photography, who is setting up horror themed selfie stops and things like that. So it's creating more of an event that like you would at something like Halloween Horror Nights, which what we learned again through process of experience was that people have a lot of expectations because of Halloween Horror Nights and Disney. What can we do to meet those expectations? Let's move into this environment where you can come do your drive-through haunt, which is going to take you about 25, 30 minutes, but then get out of your car, go to an escape room, get some really good food. District, I can't speak too much to it, but they have created some really awesome menu items specifically for Halloween, which I got to try last week. And let me tell you something, pizza fries better look out because they are coming for you.
Oh boy, because
Yeah.
those are legendary, Universal. Wow. Yeah, I'm now even more excited about going to Scream and Stream, 2.0 here in 2021. Because I love these ideas of how you got the mall tenants involved and they're doing horror themes. I love escape rooms. This sounds great. District sounds awesome doing the themed food. I'm game for this. I'm excited. So I'm excited to do this as part of this drive-through experience. Now, one question I have is, will the drivers of the cars be able to do that? Like, is it you're shooting at things when you're stopping?
Much like last year, drivers, we need you focused on driving. So everyone, but I mean, everyone is still a part of this experience because again, safety is of the utmost importance. We're right now we're dealing with the Delta variant and all of that. And so we're still looking at safety. And that's why what's really cool about us being an event born out of COVID, we know how to operate in COVID because that's all we know. And so, obviously, when it comes to anything handheld by the guests are all being sanitized and stuff. But when it comes to the experience within the car, everyone has a job. The job of the driver, I'm sorry to say, some people aren't going to like this. You need to drive. I need your hands on 10 and 2. I need you focused on the road. But we've got this really cool tech package called the EMU or the EMU that goes into the car that is a part of the experience. So you're delivering it's this kill switch device. And so the driver, your job is to safely deliver that device from point A to point B. Now, people in the car right now with the way we've got it all figured out is up to 3 people in the car that are not the driver get to have a laser suppression gun. VIPs get more, so look into that experience. But their job is to protect the driver. Driver, you got to focus on, you are baby driver from baby driver. Like, you got to do this. That is your job.
Everyone else, though.
Everyone else is here to protect you. And so they're all protecting you, and you've got this package in your car that's interacting with the environment with lights and sounds and stuff. Some people might think, being a driver is going to be the worst. Nah, you got a lot to look out for yourself. We still safety is number one in our mind the entire time creating this experience, even with COVID. So driver 10 and 2, but you are still going to have an absolute blast. Even again, we had the play test with people to kind of see how it all worked. And even the drivers were like, this was still really stressful and scary for me. So I promise you, and that's also reason to come back and do it again, because, switch up your drivers and have a completely different experience. We're A-okay with that. And our price, if you got enough people crammed into your car, the price is low enough per person. It's worth coming back and doing it again because the experience is never going to be the same, especially now with this interactive element involved. You're not going to maybe some of you are really bad shots and it's going to change the game because we're now one part haunted house, one part escape room experience, one part laser tag. And you get to experience all of that as you're driving through.
That is so cool. The more you tell me about this, the more I'm excited about it. I am so here for this. I have a whole bunch of friends that I just knowing their taste, their personalities are going to be all over this. Where I hopefully be able to make media night, but probably come back with some other people. And this is awesome. It sounds great. Well, Josh, thank you so much for talking about your love of theme parks and your involvement in the haunt industry and the innovation you guys have done with Scream and Stream and helping out all these people that have been out of work, from Disney and Universal and elsewhere. And that's just awesome. I love the synergy and bringing some unique and differentiating haunt to the community as well. And you guys did a great job last year, but this year, wow, this is so exciting. Very cool. So the last thing I want to just ask you is, again, you've got this Scream and Stream. A lot of people have never experienced it. So where can people find you? If you could let us know the website where people can check it out, get tickets for those time ticket events, any social media channels you guys have, please share away.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely find us on, www.scream.com. All over social media, Scream and Stream, Twitter. Our Twitter is quite sassy, and that Twitter is year round. We didn't stop. All over Instagram, Facebook, and y'all don't know this, but I'm going to throw this on you now. Anyone listening, if you go to screamandstream.com to buy tickets and you drop the code Coaster as you're checking out, you are going to save 10% on your order, and that is going to be valid for the entire run of Scream and Stream. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to go shoot some zombies and clowns, I'm going to save you 10% right there with code word Coaster as you're checking out. So do that, check it out, come see us, come see all that even just Oviedo Mall has to offer, and just how we're going to make this experience so much more than you expected, especially if you went last year. We had a lot of people who went last year and are like, this wasn't the greatest. And I've reached out and talked to them and been like, look, we learned, we changed. Please come and give us a second chance. Let us show you that we've grown. Because, I mean, you want to go back and look at HHN, they had growing pains at the beginning. And I mean,
oh yeah,
if anything, go back to, the sage advice of John Hammond. Theme parks, they don't go well the first. Disneyland struggled. I mean, they had velociraptors killing and murdering people, and we do not have that, I promise. But we've definitely learned and grown, and please come and grow with us. And you might have, the internet toxin says it's things, but we listened and we worked and grew from that. And if you do not have fun, I will be there every single night. You can come talk to me about it, and I'm not going to do anything for you because this isn't Disney, but you can come talk to me about it.
Oh, that sounds great. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for offering a discount, the 10% discount to our listeners. Appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Josh. I am so excited for Scream and Stream here in 2021. Can't wait to go. Hopefully our listeners will get to experience it as well. So thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Andrew. That was an awesome description of how your haunt is. I would love to have been able to do that with the whole being able to shoot zombies with a laser gun or even with the paintball gun. I mean, that would be so much fun. I think that would help with a lot of that fear and anxiety that people get when they go into these things of like, okay, I still have control of my situations and my surroundings, because I know that's what it is for me. It's a lot of the anxieties of not having that control of my surroundings. Yeah. So this is like the perfect thing for this.
Yeah, and I also want to take the opportunity to thank Josh, because if you guys did not pay attention, for those that live in Orlando or are planning on being in Orlando during the haunt season, there is a special passcode if you were to buy an admission ticket to their event. Just enter the word Coasters and you will get a discount on your admission ticket. And I want to thank Josh because he is the first guest to ever offer our listeners a discount on an admission to any event.
Yes, thank you, Josh. That is huge.
Well, anyway, guys, this was a really awesome interview, and I really want to thank Josh for coming on and sharing with us about Scream and Scream. Justin, how can our listeners be able to find us on social media?
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you want to see more from us, we upload every Friday. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all at Coaster Challenge. Links in the description.
Thank you, Justin. Yes, guys, make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, because we always give update of where we're at and what we're doing, and we do all kinds of fun stuff on our social media pages. But this was a really good Halloween edition episode, and we want to thank you guys. So this is David Cantu.
This is Jenna Gazelle.
And we'll see you all next week right here on the Coaster Challenge podcast.